My friend, I want to share with you tonight the most profound secret of manifestation I have ever encountered. A secret so complete, so total in its implications, that once you truly understand it, you will never again approach your life the same way. Many of you have come to me carrying the same quiet frustration. You have tried, you have visualized, you have affirmed, declared, believed, or tried to believe. And still your desires seem to hover just beyond reach, perpetually almost here, perpetually delayed. You have wondered if you are doing something wrong. You have wondered if the law works for everyone except somehow you. Tonight, I will tell you exactly why. And more importantly, I will reveal to you how to manifest your desires not with months of patient waiting, but with the kind of speed that will leave the people around you reaching for words like miracle and coincidence, words they will use because they do not yet know what you now know. Let me begin with a principle that the world has almost entirely misunderstood. In the Gospel of John, it is written, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Now, what is this Word? Most people read that sentence and picture sound. They picture language, speech, commandments spoken from on high. But the word I am speaking of tonight is not uttered by physical lips. The word is your inner conversation. It is the ceaseless, largely unconscious mental dialogue that runs through your mind from the moment you wake until the moment sleep finally takes you. And even then, it continues. The inner voice that narrates your day, the internal running commentary on your life, your circumstances, your relationships, your worth, that is the word. And it is, as the scripture says, God in the only sense that matters practically. It is the creative power behind everything that appears in your world. Here is the truth that most people simply have not grasped, and its absence costs them everything. Your inner conversation is the cause of your life. Not some things, not most things. All things, every detail of your current circumstances, your finances, your relationships, your health, your opportunities, the people who treat you well, and the people who don't. All of it is your habitual inner dialogue, made visible. When you truly understand this not as an interesting idea, but as the operating law of your existence, you will begin to manifest with a rapidity that will astonish you. Not because anything outside you has changed, but because you have finally located the lever. Let me tell you about a woman who came to me not long ago. She approached me after one of my lectures, and I could see in her eyes the specific exhaustion of someone who has been fighting the same battle for years without winning. Her son, her own child, had been estranged from her for 3 years. She had tried everything the world tells you to try: affirmations, visualization. She had even traveled across the country to see him, and he had refused. And still the silence between them held. After attending my lectures, she began to examine something she had never thought to look at: her inner conversation. And what she found there was this: why won't my son talk to me? What did I do wrong? Will he ever forgive me? Day after day, week after week, 3 years of that inner dialogue running on its faithful loop. Do you see what was happening? She was not simply thinking about the problem. She was, with every repetition of that inner conversation, reinforcing the state of separation as her lived reality. The estrangement was not the cause of her anguish, it was the effect of the conversation she'd been having with herself about it. The conversation that kept the estrangement intact, as reliably as mortar holds stone. I gave her a single instruction: change the inner dialogue, not by force, not by willpower, but by assuming the state of reunion. Begin speaking internally as a mother who already speaks to her son every day. Let the inner conversation become, "How wonderful it is to hear his voice. How warm he sounded this morning. How grateful I am that we found our way back to each other." Within 1 week, 7 days, her son called. He called and he apologized, and he told her he wanted to rebuild what had been broken between them. This is not a coincidence. This is not an accident of timing. This is the law operating with the precision it always operates with, delivering back into the visible world the exact state of consciousness that had been established within. Her inner conversation changed, and the outer world had no choice but to follow. Let me take you deeper. In the Gospel of Matthew, it is written, "Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Your treasure is not your desire. I want you to hear that clearly. Your treasure, the thing your heart is actually pointing toward, the thing the universe is actually responding to, is your inner conversation about your desire. If you claim to want financial abundance, but the conversation running continuously through your mind is, "I never have enough. Everything costs too much. I can't afford this," then that conversation is your real treasure. That is the state you have claimed, and that, with mathematical certainty, is what must manifest. The speed of your manifestation is in direct proportion to the consistency of your inner conversation. When your inner dialogue aligns completely with your desire, without contradiction, without the private whisper of doubt that lives underneath the affirmation, manifestation follows as inevitably as dawn follows darkness. It cannot be prevented. It is law. Now, some of you are already raising the objection I always hear, but I try to think positive thoughts, and still the other conversation seems to run itself. I can't control it. This is where most seekers go wrong. They try to force the inner conversation. They attempt to police their thoughts, to stand guard over every internal word, to catch and correct each negative drift before it does damage. This approach creates nothing but exhaustion and resistance, which, as you now understand, only slows the process further. The secret is not control. The secret is assumption. When you genuinely assume a state, when you inhabit it fully, from the inside out, the inner conversation appropriate to that state flows naturally, without effort, because it belongs there. A truly wealthy person does not need to remind themselves to think wealthy thoughts. The inner dialogue of abundance is simply the native language of the state they occupy. You do not manufacture it. You assume the state, and the conversation follows. Tonight, I want to give you something practical to take with you. When you go to sleep this evening, do not immediately attempt to change your inner conversation. Instead, do something more important first. Listen to it. Simply become aware. Observe the inner dialogue that runs through your mind as you settle into the dark. Don't judge it, don't fight it, just hear it. What you will discover is this: your current inner conversation is a perfect, precise, faithful map of your current circumstances. Every detail of your life right now has been narrated into existence by your habitual inner dialogue. The relationship that isn't working, the money that isn't there, the recognition that hasn't come. Somewhere in the quiet of your own mind, a conversation has been running that called all of it into being. This is why people can visualize for hours, affirm until their throat is raw, attend every lecture, and read every book, and still see no results. Their inner conversation, running underneath all that effort, is saying something entirely different. And the inner conversation always wins. It is the actual creative force. Everything else is performance. Change the inner conversation, and you change the world. But you must change it naturally by assuming the state, not by forcing the words. Consider a woman who desires to be married. She might repeat, "I am happily married," 1,000 times a day. But if her actual inner dialogue, the conversation that runs while she's washing dishes, driving to work, waiting in line, is, "Why hasn't he come yet? Maybe something is wrong with me. Other people find love so easily," then those are the conditions she is manufacturing. Those are the states she is inhabiting. And no amount of morning affirmation can outrun an all-day inner narrative of absence. But when she assumes the state of the happily married woman, When she inhabits that consciousness so completely that it becomes her natural home, her inner conversation shifts without effort. It begins to contain things like, "He always knows how to make me laugh. I love the way we talk about everything. I'm so grateful for the life we're building." These conversations arise spontaneously because they are native to the state she has assumed. They are not manufactured, they are discovered. And here is the law: the state you occupy always, without exception, objectifies itself in your outer world. In the book of Revelation, we read, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." This is not a description of an external deity operating somewhere beyond your reach. This is a description of your own consciousness, the I am that you are, the awareness that is the beginning and end of everything you experience. And your inner conversation is the specific, daily, moment by moment way you define what I am is. When you say internally, "I am struggling, I am trying, I am waiting for my desire to come," you are declaring the terms of your I am. You are casting yourself as the seeker, the waiter, the not yet arrived. And the universe, which has no opinion about this and no preference, simply confirms whatever you have declared. The secret of rapid manifestation is to speak from the end, not from the place of trying to get there, from the place of already being there. To let your I am speak in the language of completion, not the language of pursuit. Let me be precise about something here, because the distinction matters enormously. If you desire financial abundance, there is a common approach that sounds positive but is actually quietly undermining. Money is coming to me, I am attracting wealth, I am on my way to financial freedom. These statements, well intentioned as they are, speak from a place of not yet having. They push the desire perpetually forward, always arriving, never arrived. The inner dialogue of a wealthy person does not sound like that. It sounds like, "I love how easily money moves in my life. It's wonderful to have more than enough to give. I enjoy the freedom of choosing the best." Do you feel the difference? The first set of statements describes a journey. The second describes a home. Assume the home, and the world must build it around you. Some of you will resist this and say, "But isn't this lying to yourself? Isn't this a denial of reality?" I want to address this with the full weight it deserves. What you call reality is the outer picturing of past inner conversations. Your current circumstances, which seem so solid, so immovable, so inarguably real, are nothing more than yesterday's inner dialogue made visible. They are not reality in any permanent sense. They are a photograph of a state of consciousness that has already changed or can change the moment you choose to change your inner conversation. In the letter to the Hebrews, it is written, "Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear." Replace word of God with inner conversation, and you have the law I am revealing to you tonight. The things which are seen, your circumstances, your conditions, your current life, were made by the invisible, inaudible, private inner dialogue you have been maintaining. They were not made by the visible. They were made by the invisible. And the invisible, your inner conversation, can be changed. That is not lying to yourself. That is understanding for the first time what self actually is. Let me tell you about a young teacher. She had been assigned the class that other teachers spoke of in lowered voices. Students known for disruption, for refusal, for the particular exhaustion they inflicted on every instructor who stood before them. She arrived with dread already written into her inner conversation. They won't listen. This year will break me. I can't do this. She came to understand the law I am describing tonight. And she made a decision not to force positive thoughts, but to assume the state of a teacher whose class was engaged, cooperative, alive with genuine learning. From that assumed state, her inner conversation shifted. It began to contain things like, My students surprise me with their curiosity. I love how this class shows up. Teaching them is one of the great joys of my work. She held this inner conversation faithfully, even as the external circumstances initially continued to contradict her. And within 2 weeks, something began to shift. Students who had never raised their hands began to raise them. The disruptive energy that had seemed fixed began to dissolve. By the end of the month, other teachers were asking to observe her, what they called her teaching magic. It was not magic, it was the law. Her inner conversation created a state of consciousness, and the students who exist in her world as projections of her own consciousness had to conform to the new state she had assumed. Here is something even more far reaching that I want you to consider. Your inner conversation is not limited to your own circumstances. When you engage in inner dialogue about other people, you are shaping how those people appear in your experience. This is the practical meaning behind the ancient instruction to love your enemies, to bless those who curse you. These are not merely moral prescriptions, they are precise instructions in the operation of the law. When someone in your world behaves badly toward you, the first question to ask is not what is wrong with them, but what is my inner conversation about them? Are you rehearsing their faults in the privacy of your own mind? Are you replaying the moments of conflict, re-winning arguments that are already over? Are you narrating them daily as the difficult person, the hostile person, the one who doesn't appreciate you? That inner conversation is sustaining the behavior you hate. You are maintaining it. Not intentionally, but the law does not ask about intention. It simply delivers what you have been internally declaring. I had a woman write to me about her mother-in-law. Years of tension, years of quiet judgment, and barely concealed criticism. Years of a relationship that felt like a wound that would not close. And every time she thought of this woman, her inner conversation was, she'll never accept me. She's always looking for what's wrong. Nothing I do is ever enough. I gave her one instruction. Change the inner conversation about her mother-in-law. Assume the state in which that relationship is warm, easy, and loving. Let the inner dialogue become, she's so generous with her support. We have such good conversations. I'm grateful for the relationship we have. She told me later that maintaining this felt impossible at first. The external reality was so loudly contradicting the inner conversation she was trying to hold. But she persisted. And within a month, something began to change in her mother-in-law's behavior. Small gestures appeared where there had been none. Criticism softened into something that, after a while, began to resemble curiosity, and then warmth, and then eventually genuine affection. Nothing changed in the mother-in-law. Everything changed in the inner conversation about her, and the outer world, as it always does, conformed. Now let me reveal to you a deeper aspect of this secret that will accelerate your manifestations beyond anything you have previously experienced. In Ecclesiastes, it is written, "To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven." Most people read this as permission for delay, as though the universe has a schedule and their role is simply to wait for their appointed slot. But I tell you something different. Time, as you experience it in your manifestations, is a creation of your inner conversation. When your inner dialogue speaks perpetually of process, I am getting better, I am making progress, things are gradually improving, you are not affirming your desire. You are affirming the experience of perpetual becoming. You are narrating a journey that by definition never arrives, and the universe, faithful always, delivers the experience of that endless journey. But consciousness, the dimension in which all creation actually takes place, has no relationship with time. The imagination does not know past or future. It knows only now. This is why Scripture speaks of the divine as I am, not I was. Not I will be, the eternal, creative now. Your inner conversation must reflect this. Instead of my business is growing, which places a rival permanently ahead of you, The dialogue must be, I love running this business. My work is flourishing. Instead of I am healing, the dialogue must be, my body is vital and strong. The difference is not semantic. It is the difference between standing at the door and standing in the room. A man came to me who had been in financial difficulty for years. His inner conversation was laced with what seemed like positive language. Things are getting better. I'm working my way toward prosperity. The debts are slowly coming down. And he genuinely believed this was the right approach. But every one of those statements was anchoring him in the experience of gradual, of working toward, of the prosperity that is always approaching but never quite arriving. I told him to shift his inner dialogue to speak from completion. I love having more than enough. Money flows to me easily and from unexpected directions. I am financially free. He felt the strangeness of it at first, the slight unreality of saying true things about a reality that hadn't appeared yet. But he persisted. Within days, the first movement came. An investment he had forgotten about paid off. A business connection materialized that changed the shape of his work entirely. What others called coincidence, I know as law. The inner conversation shifted, and the outer world rearranged itself to match. There is a quality that must accompany your inner conversation, without which the words remain hollow and inert, and this quality is feeling. You can change the words of your inner dialogue and still manifest nothing if the words are spoken without the feeling tone of the state you are assuming. Mechanical repetition of new statements, without the inner warmth of genuine assumption, is simply noise. In the Psalms, it is written, Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. This delight, this felt, living, embodied quality of joy is what gives your inner conversation its creative power. When the internal dialogue flows naturally from the feeling of your wish fulfilled, manifestation becomes not gradual but immediate. Consider a woman who desires a loving marriage. She might repeat, I am happily married with technical correctness and complete emotional vacancy. The words carry nothing, they move nothing. But when she assumes the feeling of being genuinely, deeply loved, the warmth of it, the ease of it, the specific texture of a life shared with someone who cherishes her, then her inner conversation shifts naturally into language like, I love our evening rituals together. He knows exactly how to make a hard day lighter. I didn't know it was possible to feel this known by another person. These words carry the weight of the feeling behind them. They are alive. And living words create living circumstances. Let me share with you one more secret of this law that is almost universally overlooked. Your inner conversation during the hours of sleep is among the most powerful creative force available to you. The frontier between waking and sleeping, that soft, tender threshold where the conscious mind loosens its grip and the deeper mind becomes receptive, is a doorway into the creative power of consciousness itself. The Psalms speak of this directly. Commune with your own heart upon your bed and be still. Most people arrive at this threshold, carrying the accumulated weight of their day, the anxieties, the unresolved tensions, the rehearsal of problems they haven't yet solved. They fall asleep, narrating failure, narrating worry, narrating the gap between where they are and where they wish they were. And their subconscious mind, which does not evaluate or question, but simply receives and creates, takes these final inner conversations as instructions. It builds tomorrow's world from tonight's inner dialogue. A man came to me who had been pursuing a promotion in his company for years without success. Each night, he fell asleep strategizing, planning what to say to whom, calculating the right moves, rehearsing the case for his own advancement. His inner dialogue was entirely about getting there. It never arrived at being there. I instructed him to change his pre-sleep conversation completely. No more strategizing, no more planning. Instead, as sleep approached each night, he was to let his inner dialogue be that of someone already in the position he desired. Casual, natural, easy. The team meeting went well today. I love the scope of this work. There's something uniquely satisfying about leading at this level. Within 2 weeks, he was promoted, not merely to the position he had sought, but beyond it with greater responsibility and greater compensation than he had dared to include in his original vision. The nightly inner conversation had done what years of daytime strategizing could not. Now I want to address the moment that tests everything. The moment when appearances contradict your desire, when circumstances seem to move not toward what you've assumed, but away from it. When the external world presents evidence that appears to invalidate everything you've been practicing. This is the crucial moment. And most people fail it not because they are weak, but because they have misunderstood the relationship between inner conversation and outer circumstance. They allow their inner dialogue to be dictated by circumstances. They see the unwanted condition and let it rewrite the internal narrative. It isn't working. Things are getting worse. Maybe this doesn't apply to me. And in doing so, they hand their creative power back to the very conditions they are trying to change. In the letter to the Romans, it is written, "Call those things which be not as though they were." This is not wishful thinking. This is precise instruction in the operation of the law. Your inner conversation must call forth the reality you have assumed, regardless of what the senses are currently reporting. Because the senses are reporting the past, the objectified form of previous inner conversations, not the present reality of what your new inner conversation is now creating. A woman came to me who was manifesting perfect health while navigating a diagnosis that carried real physical weight. She refused to let her inner conversation be colonized by the medical narrative. She refused the inner dialogue of illness and replaced it with the natural inner speech of someone in vibrant, complete health. My body knows what to do. Every system is functioning with intelligence and vitality. I feel strong. She held this not with strain, but with the settled confidence of assumed truth. Her doctors use the word reversal. I call it law. One final warning before I give you tonight's summary. Your inner conversation must be protected. The world will assault it constantly with its news, its statistics, its chorus of reasonable people explaining why what you want is unlikely or impossible. The people who love you will sometimes be the loudest voices pointing at what they call reality and asking you to be reasonable. In Proverbs it is written, "Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." Your heart in this context is your inner conversation. The issues of your life, every detail of what manifests and what doesn't flow directly from it. When you allow external voices to penetrate your inner dialogue, you are not being open-minded. You are giving away your creative power to other people's assumptions. I knew a young artist who had been rejected by galleries, dismissed by critics, pressured by her family to abandon the work she was born to do. The people around her were unanimous in their verdict, and she had a choice. Let their verdict become her inner conversation, or maintain the inner dialogue that was native to the state of her own success. She chose the latter. She maintained, in the face of all of it, the inner conversation of an artist whose work was valued, sought, celebrated. My work finds the people it's meant for. This painting says something that needed to be said. She told me later that holding this felt, at times, like standing in the wind with both hands. But she stood, and the gallery came, and the collectors came, and the critics who had dismissed her found themselves, in time, revising their assessments. Her talent had not changed. The inner conversation had changed, and everything else had followed. Let me bring you now to the place where all of these threads converge into a single, clear truth. Your inner conversation is defining your self-concept at every moment, and your self-concept is determining, with absolute precision, what you manifest in your world. When you understand this completely, not as information but as lived, practical reality, you will never again feel at the mercy of circumstances, or subject to the judgment of others, or helpless in the face of conditions you did not choose. You will know that your inner conversation is the only creative power that the outer world, which appears so solid and sovereign, is nothing more than your inner dialogue made visible. That the people in your world are reflecting back to you the assumptions your inner conversation has been establishing about them. That time itself, the delay or the speed of your manifestations, is a creation of whether your inner dialogue speaks from the journey or from the destination. The practice is simple, not easy, but simple. Begin tonight, not tomorrow, not after you have prepared yourself more thoroughly. Tonight. Listen first. Hear your actual inner conversation, the real one, not the one you perform for yourself, but the one that runs when you're not watching. Hear it with compassion and without judgment, because it is not your enemy. It is simply the tool you have been using unconsciously, and a tool can be redirected. Then assume. Assume the state of your wish fulfilled, not by forcing words, but by inhabiting the consciousness of someone who already lives in the reality you desire. From inside that state, let your inner conversation flow. Let it be natural, easy, specific. Let it carry the warmth and texture of genuine experience, because you are genuinely experiencing it in the dimension where all things are first created, in the imagination, in the consciousness that is the beginning and the end of everything. Persist in this. Protect it. Do not let appearances or others' opinions rewrite your inner narrative. And know with the certainty of someone who has understood the law that the world outside you is always, without fail, being shaped by the world inside you. What I have shared with you tonight is not new knowledge. It is ancient. It is as old as the consciousness that reads these words. But its power has not aged a moment. It is as fresh, as immediate, as available to you right now as it has ever been. Your inner conversation is creating your reality in this very moment. Not the last moment, not the next, this one. Use it wisely, use it lovingly. Use it with the full, awakened understanding of what it is and what it can do. There is, in the end, no one to change but self. And self is changed by transforming the conversation you have been having with yourself, quietly, endlessly, in the sacred and sovereign privacy of your own mind. Change that conversation, and you change everything. According to your faith, be it unto you. Your faith is your inner conversation, and it will not fail you. That is the law, and that is the promise. This is Neville Lectures. I'll see you again in the next video.